and welcome everybody. I am real happy today to introduce the INBLF network to Deirdre Nero. Deirdre is an immigration practitioner in Coral Gables, Florida, and her practice focuses on all types of business immigration, including employment-based immigration and non-immigrant temporary visa applications and related matters. She works closely with small and medium companies and individual clients to coordinate and execute all aspects of their immigration strategy and represents them before the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Labor, and the Department of State. So we're looking forward to learning more about Deirdre's practice and about current state of immigration law. And with that, I turn it over to you, Deirdre.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys. Like Larry said, I'm Deirdre Nero. I'm in the Miami chapter of INBLF and actually joined during COVID life. So I haven't met hardly anyone in person from the chapter yet, unless I already knew them beforehand. So I'm really looking forward for us to start meeting each other in person again, and hopefully meeting some of you guys at some of the future INBLF events. That's going to be great. So today we're going to talk about basically what you see here on the screen, and it's going to be more of just like new kind of interesting things that have been happening, kind of recapping what we just went through with the 4 years of the Trump administration and their policies, specifically as it relates to immigration, what's going on with the new administration. What have they already done? What are they talking about doing in terms of immigration? Again, what has the impact of this pandemic been on immigration, which is, it's been substantial. I mean, as you could imagine, immigration is, you know, it's the movement of people across country borders. And this pandemic has really thrown a monkey wrench into that process. So we'll talk about that a bit. Going in a little bit of a different direction. This is for my Florida people out there. Florida's new mandatory E-Verify law that just started in January of this year. And then related to that, but not limited to Florida, we'll talk about some I-9 compliance updates, specifically as it relates to the COVID flexibilities and things that employers can do during the pandemic when they're verifying their employees that maybe they're not able to do during normal life. We'll touch quickly on the H-1B visa lottery because it's a timely topic. It just happened like just now. It just ended basically. So we'll talk about that and recap where we're at with that. Someone, it might have been you, Larry, asked me to talk about the export control compliance as it relates to immigration petition. Not really a new topic, but I threw it in there because someone asked me to, so I figured why not. And then we'll review a few other little kind of hot and new topics. So that's where we're going over the course of the next hour. Let's jump right in. So my fellow immigration lawyers know the pain. We had a hard 4 years. It was a lot of as you can see on the screen, lack of transparency from the prior administration, an overall kind of hostility towards immigrants just in general that then trickled down through all the policy and regulations made by that former administration, including just things like shifting away from like USCIS being a customer service based organization, taking, you know, words out of their mission statement that, you know, used to have it focused on customer service towards foreign nationals, adding the word alien where it didn't appear before, which now the new administration is trying to move the word alien from the laws and put in foreign national or non-citizen. So even just little things like that contributed just towards the general feeling of hostility towards immigrants. I'm sure you recall the former president's in some of his speeches, you know, just basically implying that immigrants were criminals and drug dealers and, bad hombres, I think he called called a lot of them. So, that trickled down through the attitudes in adjudications and in the policies. We had 400 plus policy changes. It seems like there was something new happening every week. The immigration lawyers, all our heads were exploding on basically a weekly basis as there was some new change that would come out, sometimes usually on like a Friday night, right? So it's like, oh, thanks for ruining our weekends. Like here comes something on a Friday that we all have to deal with, over the weekend and trying to figure out how that's going to affect our clients. We had a lot of bans. It started out right away with the Muslim. I remember watching the news and crying at the news because I was so dismayed at what was happening. And I remember my boyfriend saying to me, you don't really have that clientele, like where we live in Miami. I don't have a lot of clients that were even affected by that. And I tried to explain to him, like, regardless of that, like, just what that meant, just the what that implied and like what it meant was really kind of disturbing to immigrant advocates who basically spend our careers, advocating for our foreign national clients and their interests. And then the bans, as COVID kind of came into play, there were bans on immigrant visas, non-immigrant visas, country-related bans. We're going to talk about all that in a minute. And it really was very difficult to deal with. Severe restriction on what we were able to do prior to these bans. We also had a lot of delay, like things just slowed to almost a near halt. It felt like at times things came to a complete halt. Case processing, times for adjudications just doubling and tripling from where they were prior. And we're still kind of feeling the fallout from that. We're going to need a lot of time to fix this. This is not, we're happy that the new administration is in and trying to fix some of this, but this is not something that can be reversed overnight. Can't change 400 changes at the drop of a hat. And just also the overall attitude kind of the adjudicators and stuff. So it's a deep-seated problem that festered over the 4 years of the prior administration. And now we're seeing slowly that things are gonna hopefully start to get better, but we're gonna need time. And we're seeing the continued kind of fallout from the delays and increases of requests for additional evidence, a lot of times frivolous requests, and putting our clients kind of in really difficult positions. And as advocates, it's been hard. So, taking a deep breath and stepping back from all of that kind of terribleness over the last 4 years in terms of immigration, at least, we saw, a new day coming with the election of Biden. And, a lot of people have been really excited about what's going to happen, but also we're seeing, over the course of the first 100 days that we're almost, I guess, at that point right now. Not quite, I don't think. I'm really bad at math, but I don't think we've quite hit the first 100 days yet, but we're in it. And it's been slow, but we definitely see movement in the right direction. Something we've seen is the introduction of, they were calling it like Biden's bill, but, obviously it's a bill that was basically embodying what Biden announced as his immigration priorities. So you see that here. We have in February introduction of the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 in the House. I don't believe it's been introduced yet in the Senate. It was supposed to be introduced at the end of February. But from what I, am seeing, I don't think it was yet introduced in the Senate. I could be wrong, though. So someone call me out if I'm wrong. But basically, it's an identical bill to the House bill. We do think it's probably going to pass the House. It's going to be, I think Menendez said this himself when I heard him on a conference with an immigration organization that he was speaking to. I think the words he used were a Herculean task to get this through the Senate. So we'll see, how it plays out, but they're cautiously optimistic, but I think it's going to be a difficult thing to get this bill through the Senate. However, we see that the priorities that are embodied in this bill, which you see here on the screen, are all really steps in a positive direction. Providing pathways to citizenship, strengthening labor protections, keeping families together, diversity, protecting refugees, protecting workers from exploitation, prioritizing smarter border controls, addressing the root cause of migration. These are all really important themes that have, long been kind of plaguing the immigration system. So we're really hopeful that get passed maybe in one bill. Maybe we'll get some smaller positive legislation that comes out from this. So stay tuned. And on that note, like I was implying, Biden's first 100 days, these are some of the things that he has done in the first 100 days already. AILA, which is the American Immigration Lawyers Association, it's our kind of voluntary bar for immigration lawyers, has been an awesome resource. I'm not trying to sell them or anything, but they have really great resources. And one of them that I found that is super cool is this table of substantive changes that is tracking every single thing that is changing throughout the new administration. So if you go on there, and it's actually like clickable, so you can click through the table and scroll through, and it's really an interesting resource for anyone that wants to see everything that's changing and how and when. So these are just some of the things that we have so far. A big one down here in South Florida, TPS for Venezuela. I'll talk about that a little later in the presentation, but that's been huge. We have a huge Venezuelan community down here in Florida. So this has been kind of like the real hot topic down here. The immigrant visa ban, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, was revoked. The Trump administration had tried to make the citizenship test much more difficult. And the Biden administration said, no, strike that. We're going to revert back to the prior test, how it was before. I think that's supposed to say 2008, by the way, not 2003, for the civics test bullet point there. They were trying.
Can I interrupt with a question?
Yeah, please.
Someone who doesn't do immigration law, what is TPS? And
sorry, I forget that, like the lingo that we use. Not everyone acronyms are. There's a lot of acronyms too in immigration law. So TPS is temporary protected status. So it provides a temporary protection and ability to get a work permit and a travel permit and some legal status for people that are in the United States as of the date that the country's designated. And usually it's countries that are like in the midst of, right after a natural disaster or some kind of political strife, or have like some kind of really bad situation in their country. And it's a temporary designation that only lasts for a certain period of time. So if you see like the first bullet point, one of the things the Biden administration just did was extended the designation for Syria because it was about to expire. And so instead of letting it expire and then putting all of the people that are relying on that protection in a bad situation where their protections are terminated, they extended. Also started a new designation for Venezuela that we never had before. So it's like a huge deal for the Venezuelan community down here. They've done a lot of really interesting things like right away. So the ones that are more towards the bottom, some of them happened like pretty much first week of the Biden administration, like ending the Muslim travel ban. That I think was first day. One that they kind of always do, but has kind of special context for the immigration lawyers, is the regulatory freeze, where basically they look back on like all the regulations that were basically in process before they came in with the new administration, and they freeze everything for a review. And then apart from that, he also ordered a top to bottom review of all of the regulations, policies, guidances that were creating barriers in the immigration system. Took some action to delay some of the rules that the Trump administration were trying to put in that were really strictly regulating the H-1B visa category, which is professional work visas. So that is a big category for a lot of companies that use professional workers. A lot of the engineering jobs, the computer jobs, STEM, science, technology, engineering, math jobs fall under that visa category. And Trump really had it, the Trump administration really had it out for that category, and they were doing a lot of regulating. So we've kind of noticed that Biden might not be as willing to do away with all of that as we had hoped, but at least he's delaying for review some of those regulations that were about to kick in. So some of the things that has been going on, but it's overall been pretty positive. There's been a few things with the bans that people don't love, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, you know, I kind of went over all this already, but these are the kind of the key parts of the Biden immigration plan. We're really excited, at least in our office, you know, to see family-based immigration reform, employment-based immigration reform. Those are all things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but then other things that not so much I deal with, but, you know, reforming the courts, CBP, immigration courts, restoring protections for asylum seekers and refugees. The Trump administration was doing some pretty strict and really kind of restrictionist policies for asylum seekers and refugees. One of the things, like the Remain in Mexico policy, where people seeking asylum had to stay in Mexico for their cases to be adjudicated, that has been done away with as well. So a lot of interesting things, more to come. Obviously, it's just kind of the beginning. We're still in that first 100 days. Some of it is easy, executive orders. Those are easy to get rid of. But a lot of it, not so easy to get rid of. Some things is going to take legislation because we have such a narrow margin in the Senate, or no margin, I guess. I mean, it's pretty much like tied, you know, in the Senate. It's a bit of a task to get the bills passed, the laws passed. So we'll see what happens. But overall, just a more positive feeling. One of the points was like that Mayorkas was confirmed as the head of DHS. Mayorkas is, you know, more pro-immigrant. He's an immigrant himself, you know, so he, everyone felt pretty good about that choice and what that meant for the direction that this administration was going to go on immigration. So let's move. We've got lots more things to talk about. COVID-19 has had a huge impact on immigration. And part of, not everything, right? There were a lot of other things too. I actually did a whole, like, almost 2-hour presentation just on basically what you see on this slide. So we're going to try to boil it down to like a few minutes. But one of the major issues was the bans that were placed on immigration by the Trump administration. Because of COVID-19, you know, depending on who you ask, some people probably think that that was the prior administration using COVID-19 as an excuse to put in barriers to legal immigration. But that, I guess that depends on who you ask. In my opinion, I think a lot of this could have been avoided if they would have just implemented the testing requirement that the Biden administration has implemented for for all international travelers. They would have just done something like that sooner. We might not have had to have all of these bans, and it probably would have been more effective. But what the Trump administration did was, first they had an immigrant visa ban. So actually I'm going to skip ahead and then I'll go back because I have a slide that just shows. This was basically the presidential proclamation on in April for the immigrant visa ban, where basically they banned entry of for categories of immigrants and issuance of immigrant visas. So immigrant visas, for those of you that aren't immigration lawyers, is permanent residence. Okay, so this ban specifically, which was Presidential Proclamation 114, was geared towards permanent immigrants, people looking to come here for permanent residency in the United States. This was a huge deal and restricting a lot of people from being able to come to the United States, people that already had, like, for example, the diversity visa lottery winners that had to process by the end of the fiscal year. Like a lot of those people lost their chances. There was, crazy lawsuits and everything about trying to get those people through before they basically lost their chance to immigrate based on their win of the diversity visa lottery. There was a lot of crazy stuff going on. That ban ended by Biden